What's good, guys? Welcome back to Small Talk on Head-to-Head Fantasy Basketball. And as you guys can see, we're going to be going over the sell high candidates. And of course, I'm being joined by my partner, Anson.
What's up, guys? Before we get started, I would like to remind you guys just go check in the link in the description. We started a Instagram. Go ahead, scroll down. If you have Instagram, go follow us on Instagram. Today, we're going to be covering over sell high candidates, and we're updating this. We're currently recording this video as games are going on. So we're doing this on November 21st on Tuesday night. So if some of these players have good games, bad games, we're not sure. We're just updating it. So the stats are updated until November 20th. So let's get started. Our first candidate that we have is Paul George. Paul George was a candidate from our last sell high video. He's still here. We still think he is a sell high. We're not going to go too much in depth of why Paul George is a sell high because we covered him last video, but he's still doing amazing. We don't think that he's able to sustain these numbers with James Harden entering the team. A lot of the reason why he's doing so well is because he is shooting a career high 21 field goal attempts per game. He's basically playing like his prime, 28.7 points per game. Russell Westbrook has been really struggling. He's been shooting 25% from the field. Westbrook's been averaging only like 10 or 11 points per game. And Harden has still been taking only 12.7 field goal attempts per game, which is an increase from the last time we checked in on Harden. However, he hasn't shot 12.7 field goal attempts since he was a bench player on OKC.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. What we're seeing from Paul George is obviously a really, really good sign that he can play well after struggling with the past season of injuries. Right. We just don't know how consistent this is and how sustainable. So as of right now, we're still having him on sell high. I know you guys saw from our other video, we said Paul George was sell high. Anson and I, we still think Paul George is still sell high, right? As of right now, it just looks like a really, really good month for him so far. And if he's able to sustain it, then we're wrong. Then but as of right now, Paul George is sell high for us. Let's move on from PG. We got
Yes.
DeAaron Fox. So for DeAaron Fox, as of right now, his rank is 14. Right, the past 7 days, he's been averaging 50 fantasy points a game. Same thing about Paul George. We did have him in our other video, right, where we said he is potentially a sell high. We thought his numbers not sustainable. And as of right now, his numbers are slowly going down, but it's still hovering around that ceiling mark for De'Aaron Fox. So if you guys are able to try to get somebody from him, top 10, top 15 player, I would personally trade De'Aaron Fox for any of those guys. As of right now, you just look at his numbers. 47% from three, and he's shooting 10 3-point attempts a game, averaging about 29 points per game on 22 field goal attempts, 2.3 steals a game. And as of right now, he's looking like the greatest player on the planet right now. Like he's playing super well. And I don't think this is sustainable. I don't think Anson, what do you think? You think this is sustainable for De'Aaron?
Not really. He is doubling his steals from his career average. So that's 4 fantasy points per game that he isn't really supposed to be acquiring. He's also shooting ridiculous amount from three. He's improving 3-point shooter, but definitely 47% on this volume. That's Stephen Curry level. So I definitely don't think he'll maintain that. He usually shoots around 35% from three. Um, and he's shooting 37.5% this year, but that's with these skewed stats from the past 7 days. He was in our sell high last time because he had a pretty good 3 game sample size. He was out, came back. Now he's having another pretty good small sample size of good games. So if you guys can trade him for a top 15 player, I would, but De'Aaron Fox is very solid. In my opinion, he is like a top 20 player.
Yeah, let's move on from De'Aaron Fox. All right, let's see what we got next.
Yeah, so Carl Anthony Towns, yeah, Cat's been doing really well. The past 7 days, he's been averaging 51.8 fantasy points per game. In the beginning of the season, he was really struggling, and that's when Anthony Edwards was really shining. Now Anthony Edwards is struggling. Cat's been shooting 68% from the field. throughout the entirety of the season, Cat's been only averaging 39.8 fantasy points per game. That's with the last 7 days of him averaging 52. So before that, he was averaging about 37, 36 fantasy points. And, 68% from the field. That's not sustainable for anybody. Maybe Mitchell Robinson, because he only dunks and takes layups. But yeah, for someone that shoots in the perimeter, like who Cat's been very efficient. 52% is still good, but that's a large gap from 68.
Yeah, as of right now, Cat is playing like his prime self. 70% field goal is insane, right? And obviously he does shoot jumpers too. He isn't just like a run and dunk type of player, right? So as of right now, he's doing really, really well. I would say he would fall back down to around the 45 mark, 44 mark, around there. Maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower, but just around that range is where I would see him as. So 52 fantasy points. If you're able to trade him away for a like top 15 player, I would try to go for those guys, right? Because Cat has shown before that he is a top 10 fantasy player, right? As of right now, he's looking like a top 10 fantasy player, but I don't think it's sustainable. So you guys can try to trade him away for somebody else around that range or package him up for a top 10 player. I would try and do that.
The next sell high candidate we have is Jordan Clarkson, who's really been on fire the last 7 days. We've seen an uptick in minutes. He seems to be in the rotation more. The past 7 days, he's averaging 50 fantasy points per game. He's shooting 51.4 field goals on from the field on 22.7 attempts per game, which is just an outlier, as you can see on the screen. He's also averaging 29.7 points per game. Throughout the entirety of this season, there's a 20-point difference. So if you can trick someone, right, someone in your league, just show them the game log, you see all these 50, 60-point games that fantasy points that Jordan Clarkson's been averaging, just know that before these several games, he was not good. He was not very good. And the 51.4 field goals percentage is definitely out of character for Jordan Clarkson. Last season and throughout the majority of the career, he's been low 40s from the field, and he's attempt usually even as a first option doesn't attempt more than 18 field goals per game. So 22.7, that would be the NBA league leader if he were to keep that up. So these numbers are definitely skewed.
Yep, I can't agree with you more. Jordan Clarkson is a phenomenal player. We've been waiting for his breakout ever since they traded Mitchell and Gobert away. And right now, you can make the argument to someone in in your group, like, yo, Clarkson is that player. He's gonna be the second option behind Laurie. Whatever you gotta say, get Jordan Clarkson, get him off your team, and try to trade him for somebody else that's a lot better than him. All right, let's move on from Jordan Clarkson. All right, we got Brook Lopez. Okay, Brook Lopez. If you just look at his stats really quick, past 7 days, averaging 46.5 fantasy points a game, 5 blocks per game, 5 blocks per game. At this point, just give this man defensive player of the year if he's doing 5 blocks a game. But you can just look at where most of the fantasy points come from. More than half of the fantasy points come from his blocks. 5.5 blocks per game is definitely unsustainable. Okay, I don't care who you are. This is not NBA 2K. You can't average 5 blocks a game. Okay. As of right now, his last season, he only averaged 3 blocks per game. He's taking a massive jump of 2 blocks per game, 2 more blocks per game, my correction. So majority of his fantasy points come from these blocks per game. And as of right now, it looks really, really good because 46.5 fantasy points per game puts him ranked 21, right? As of right now, past 7 days. So I mean, in my opinion, same thing with Jordan Clarkson. Send this guy away, bro. Send this guy away. Package him and Clarkson and get both of them. Trade for somebody else that's rosterable. Trade these two for like Randall or Brunson, like trade for those guys that are not doing too well, or Jaren Jackson Jr. Trade Brook Lopez and Clarkson for Jaren Jackson. Trade these guys away. Get them off your team if you have them on your team, right? These numbers are definitely unsustainable, right? But as of right now, yeah, 46.5 is just crazy.
Yeah, the last NBA player to average 5 blocks per game was Mark Eaton in 1984 and 1985 season. Before that, no one else has ever done that. I don't think Brook Lopez is on that pace to do that. So besides that, Brook Lopez numbers are pretty normal, right? So if you were just to look at his field goal, his 3-point attempts, they're pretty much what we would expect from Brook Lopez. It's just that 1.3 steals. That's double his steals. And 5 blocks per game. If he averages 3 blocks, like what he did last season, which is already very impressive. If he could replicate 3 blocks per game, that's at least 10 fantasy point drop, right? And then we're also thinking about, okay, eventually they're slowly ramping up Chris Middleton. So some of Brook Lopez scoring output is possibly in jeopardy just because when Middleton is getting his 30 minutes per game, there is going to be less shots to go around for like a rotational player like Brook Lopez.
Yeah, let's move on from Brook Lopez. We got Chris Paul.
Chris Paul is another one of our sell high candidates. Past 7 days, he's averaging 46 fantasy points. It's kind of an outlier. He did have a few good games. For the entirety of the season, he's averaged 33 fantasy points per game. Um, and the last 7 games, he's averaging 14.3 points per game, almost 9 assists, 4.5 rebounds, 2.3 steals. And he has been playing 34 minutes per game, which is what I really want to emphasize on is he probably won't be getting 34 minutes per game when the entire roster was healthy. And, before Draymond Green got suspended, Steph Curry was healthy. Chris Paul was coming off the bench playing 26, 27 minutes per game. So he's getting an increase in minutes. There's Draymond isn't really there to handle the ball as much. So Chris Paul is taking advantage of that. And the last 7 games, he did play a few games without Steph Curry, obviously. If you're playing without the leading scorer, in one of the games against the Timberwolves, Clay and Draymond were both ejected, so there was really nobody to provide like a scoring output. So Chris Paul was just able to put up more points than he usually does. So maybe someone doesn't in your league doesn't really keep up, hasn't really been watching the Warriors at all. Maybe you can just trick them with your game log.
Yeah, yeah, same thing. 34 minutes per game. When they tested it out in the beginning of the season, they decided to move him to the bench, and he was borderline. I mean, he was still rosterable, just like his numbers weren't this amazing, right? He was averaging probably like 25, 26 fantasy points a game on the bench, right? As of started right now, you can see he's doing really, really well. 46 fantasy points per game without Draymond. And as of right now, the Warriors are really good. There is a slight note I do want to add. The games are going well as of right now, so this might be the lineup they start running with. There's a small chance that might happen, and if it does happen, then it's good for Chris Paul. If it doesn't, then you guys should try to send him away. But there's that little sliver of that maybe you guys can hold on to Chris Paul for a little bit just to see if Steve Kerr still runs with this lineup when Draymond comes back. I don't really think so, but as of right now, they're playing well. So who knows? This might be the lineup they run. If they do, then Chris Paul it could be a really good hold. All right, let's move on from Chris Paul. We got Mr. Kevin Durant, the Slim Reaper himself, the best fantasy player the past 7 days. If you just look at his look at his rank and his average, 70 fantasy points a game, damn near 70 fantasy points a game. Okay, as of right now, he's averaging 52 in the entire season, but the last 7 days, averaging 70 fantasy points per game, shooting 36. I mean, he's shooting with 36 points per game, eight rebounds, and 8 assists per game. 62% field goal past 7 days, which is extremely efficient. We know this is what KD can do, but at this age and like what he's been able to do the past 7 days, I think this is a major sell high. Like if you can trade him for anyone that's not performing well, right? I don't know who you can really get for KD, just because the people I'm thinking of, you try to get like Giannis, Embiid, SJ, but everyone else has been doing pretty well too. So it's very, very hard to get those guys out of your other player's hand. Maybe you can try to get who's like a top 10 player. You can try to get like trying to think who's top 10 in
Maybe
the league right
Curry.
now. Like maybe Tatum. I mean, I'll trade KD for Tatum. Um, Depending on who you want, and you can really get like a top 5, top 6 player for Kevin Durant as of right now because he's playing out of his mind. 36 points per game is the leading scorer, of course. But yeah, as of right now, he's going insane.
Yeah, we know Kevin Durant is normally very efficient. This is just too efficient. And on top of that, some of the volume is definitely going to get trimmed down. Booker has been coming back. The last 7 days, he has been playing with Booker, and he's been keeping up these numbers. But Like Alan mentioned too, with Kevin Durant's age, I'm sure Kevin Durant can just drop 50 any night he wants to, but that's not really his goal. So I do expect him to start kind of just easing up on the production, not taking so much volume. Um, Now that Booker is healthy, probably let Booker score a little bit more. Just kind of rest his body. Also, they are eventually gonna get Bradley Beal, who's been in and out. But when Bradley Beal comes back and Booker is healthy, they have more help. I don't expect Kevin Durant to be taking this many shots, and the efficiency, yes, he's very efficient, but I don't think 62% is just unsustainable.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said there. Let's move on from KD. We got Herb Jones. Okay, Herb Jones is probably one of the crazy ones that some of you guys may or may not have had in your league already. If you just look at his game log, this guy's averaging 48 fantasy points per game the past 7 days. And if you just look at his numbers, this guy is averaging 3 steals a game, 2 blocks a game, shooting a 60% field goal. So similar to Brook Lopez, half of his fantasy points comes from his defensive stats, right? Which is good, right? But at the same time, it's not very sustainable, right? We are also playing without CJ at the moment, and he's been doing a lot more of the heavy lifting. I do think that he is still rosterable. It's just that I don't think this defensive stats will keep up. 3 steals a game, 2 blocks per game. Yeah, I don't think that's happening. I think he'll average probably like 1.5 steals a game, maybe 1 block a game, hover around there. And production similar. Maybe drop his points per game a little bit, but his efficiency is really, really good as of right now, past 7 days, of course. So I think he'll fall back down to about the 38, 40 fantasy points until CJ comes back. But yeah, as of right now, I think Herb Jones is really solidifying himself.
Yeah, we've definitely seen the volume increase. It's very rare for a player to produce more and also do it more efficiently. So Herb Jones, I'm not saying that he can't do it, but it's very rare for us to see, okay, um, this star player's hurt. We got a guy coming in. He's producing more, but he's also doing it more efficiently. That's kind of what a lot of players, they take more shots, they score more, their production's more, but they're less efficient. Herb Jones is doing both. 60% is kind of crazy though. He's been doing 47% for his career, so maybe 50% is more realistic, but the past 7 days he's just been on fire. And back to what Alan said about the steals, the 3 steals, the 2 blocks. Definitely not. That's prime Kawhi on his best week, right? So last year, 1.6 steals, 0.6 blocks. I think with more minutes, he can maybe increase that to at most 2 steals per game and at most maybe 1.2 blocks per game. That would really decrease his numbers though by at least 6 or 7 fantasy points, just off defensive stats. And then you're also taking consider that his efficiency probably won't be there. But with CJ out indefinitely, I think you could definitely keep him. But if you can trade him for something that for someone that could possibly give you 40 or 38 fantasy points, I think you should do it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. If you can try to trade him away, package him with whoever you got, and get like a top 50 player, or top 30, I think you can get Herb Jones. Top 30, you package him well enough, you can get someone to bite on that, and you guys can have a pretty good flip for that for Herb Jones. Let's move on from Herb Jones, right? We got Jonas Valanciunas, right? The other Pelican player that's also feasting right now. Similar stats, 46 fantasy points per game, and his average right now is 34. So he's taking about a 12 fantasy point jump from the entire CJ McCollum incident. So 16 points per game, 4 assists, 9 rebounds. I thought a majority of his fantasy point came from his 3 points, but he looks like has been shooting too many 3 pointers. It's actually coming from his blocks and his efficiency, right? So if you look at his stats, 62% field goal percentage, 2.3 blocks per game, which if you take this guy's 2.3 blocks, add to Herb Jones, 2.8 blocks, like dude, there's a block party over there. Like they're going crazy, right? But I don't think these numbers are sustainable. I think he's still a very solid pickup, right? As of right now, from the whole CJ incident, he's putting up really, really solid numbers. I think he'll average around like 36, 37 as well after his numbers fall back to earth. 62% field goal. I don't think that's very sustainable, especially for Jonas, who shoots jumpers and takes 3 pointers, right? Everything else I think is somewhat sustainable. Maybe his blocks drop back down a little bit, but overall I think he's a solid stream for now. But in my opinion, if you can try package him and Herb Jones and get somebody else, then go for it, right? Go for it and trying to get that done.
Yeah, the main outlier is just his blocks. That seems to be the case for most of these sell high candidates. It's just that they're in a pretty good streak of getting good defensive stats. They're there at the right time, but 2.3 blocks just isn't sustainable. He averages around one usually, so that's two times his block rate. 62%, like nobody's shooting 62% besides maybe Mitchell Robinson. But besides that, yeah, everything else is somewhat sustainable. Like Alan said, he could definitely just be a long-term ad, or you could definitely keep him. I wouldn't be in a rush to trade him away, especially with Zion's injury concerns. So it's not a rush to trade Jonas Valanciunas, but if you could definitely package him, if he could be the little cherry on top, you could throw him +1 and get someone really good. I would do it.
Yep, let's move on from Jonas. All right, we'll talk more about waiver streams in our other episodes, but as of right now, we're going to talk about sell high candidates. Right, let's go on to our last candidate. We got Santi Aldama, the goat. Okay, the guy that seems to be what Jaren Jackson's supposed to be this year. Okay, he's averaging 45 fantasy points a game, even though his season of this year is only 28. So he's going crazy. He's averaging like 17 more fantasy points or 16 more fantasy points a game. He's looking at the stats. He's going insane. 19 field goal attempts, 23 points per game, 4 assists, 9 rebounds, 1 block, one steal per game. If I just took away his picture and took his name away and I told you, hey, this guy plays on the Grizzlies, you probably would say, hey, this looks like Jaren Jackson Jr., right? But it's Santi Aldama, so this is why he's a sell high. Okay, 45 fantasy points a game, definitely unsustainable. I don't care how big of a fan you are. Jaren Jackson's struggling right now. Santi Dama seems to have the green light. But I think Jaren Jackson is definitely gonna come back around and Santi Dama's numbers gonna come straight back down. But yeah, 19 field goal attempts. I don't think that's definitely not sustainable in my opinion. Okay, everything else, yeah, 23 points per game, not sustainable. Field goal percentage is fine. Block and steal per game is maybe a little high, just a little bit. 9 rebounds, 4 assists is fine. I think he'll average around like 12, 13 points per game with probably like two to three assists, maybe like 7 rebounds. I think that's usually where he'll be at. And then by the time that happens, you don't want to be holding on to Santi Aldama at that point.
Yeah, Santi Dama is a player that I would push for you guys to try to get something for Santi Dama. I don't think that Santi Dama will keep up this value. Anyone's willing to bite and take Santi Dama for anything valuable, I would just do it. He's not taking 19 field goal attempts per game, especially when John Morant is coming back. Like, even if John Morant doesn't come back, he's definitely not taking more than 15 field goals per game. So you consider that he's really just having a good streak, and then you're considering John Morant will be coming back. He's maybe the fourth option at best. If he continues to play well, he would be the fourth option at best, and even that's not promised.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you said there, Anson. Unsustainable numbers. If you can try to get this guy off your team, get him off your team ASAP. Okay, like this is the ultimate sell high for Santi Aldama. Do not buy into this. Like Santi Aldama might be good now, guys. No, stop it. Get some help. Stop it. Get this guy off your team if you have him on your team. But yeah, that should wrap up our sell high candidate videos. Right. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any comments or concerns, drop them down below. And then yeah, we'll be more than happy to help answer your concerns and your questions about who to pick or who you have on your team, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and make sure you guys go to our description. We have our Discord link is still open. We got like a community there. We feel free to ask any questions. If you got a trade for any of your leagues, you can drop it down. Alan, me, and some of our friends are trying our best to answer your questions. You can jump in and answer other people questions. Other people will answer your questions. It's a pretty nice community we got going on in our Discord. Also, don't forget to follow our new Instagram page. We just made it. We'll be dropping a lot of content, a lot of visually friendly content for you guys to see. So yeah, make sure to follow.
And we'll see you guys on our next video. We'll see you guys then. Peace.